Okay, tonight's class is sponsored by Yael. We know her as Yael Gallo, but now she has another name. In memory of her sister's yard site, which was based Chov Shvat, I'm sorry. Rachel Bas Reb David. Shama should have an aliyah. Okay, anyway, tonight's Monday night. So it's a Parsha. This week is a very basic Parsha. It's the Parsha of Matan Torah. Parsha Yitro. So before we begin, I'm going to basically give an overview of this whole Matan Torah concept, which will answer a lot of questions which are asked in the Parsha, in the story of Matan Torah. Okay, basically, let me begin with, there's a famous medrash that at Matan Torah, there was a lot of thunder and lightning, and there was a lot of commotion going on. So the nations of the world got very nervous. So they went to their prophet, his name was Bilam, and they said, what's going on here? I mean, it's a tumult, a commotion all over the world. What's going on? So Bilam answered them a famous pasuk from Tillim that we say every Friday night in davening, and that is Hashem Oiz Lama Yitain, Hashem Yavarech Hasam V'Shalom. Hashem is giving his strength, Oiz, his strength. La'ama Yitain is giving to his nation. Hashem Yavarech Hasam V'Shalom. Hashem is blessing his nation with peace. Okay? And that ends the story. So the nations of the world calm down. They realize it's not a commotion of something of earthquakes, God forbid, or commotions. It's a peaceful thing. It's a peaceful thing. Hashem is giving the Torah to the Jewish people. So we see that the pasuk itself, and Bilam realized this, that the whole concept of Torah is shalom, peace. In Chassidus, it explains not only is it Hashem Yavarech Hasabei Shalom, but Bas Shalom. Bas Shalom means Beis Shalom. Okay, there's two levels of peace. There is and I'm just going to mention now, and this is going to be explained later. There is a peace in the heavenly spheres, and there's a peace in the earthly spheres. Now, basically, when you have peace, that automatically demands that there was an argument. If there was an argument, then you can make peace. If there was no argument, if there's no difference of opinions, then what are you making peace? There was never a fight. So we know that what is the whole inyan of Torah? We know the Medrash says before Matan Torah, before Hashem gave the Torah to the Jews, there was a decree. The Medrash uses the name of two cities. One lived on the top of the mountain, one lived at the bottom of the mountain. And the Medrash, the king made a decree, the guys on the top are not allowed to go to the bottom. The guys on the bottom are not allowed to go up to the top. There was a decree. Top is top, bottom is bottom, and that's it. Then the king decided to nullify this decree. And he said the decree is over. V'ani hamaschel. The king said, I will be the first one to show that it's over. So what does that mean? What's the Medrash giving us a mashal of that? Heaven is heaven. Earth is earth. As we say in Tehillim, we say it in Hallel. Hashemayim shamayim laHashem. The heavens belong to Hashem. And the earth was given to people. Which means, in simple language, spirituality is spirituality, physicality is physicality, and they cannot mix. So there was this, so to speak, difference between up and down. Up is up, down is down, and they cannot mix. That existed before Matan Torah. What happened in Matan Torah? In a simple way, Hashem made peace between heaven and earth. Hashem Yavarech Hasami Bashalom. What was the peace that Hashem is making? Hashem is making peace between spiritual and the physical. Before that, there was a decree by Hashem. Spiritual is spiritual, physical is physical. What does this mean in layman's language? It means before Matan Torah, we know the others kept the Torah. According to most of them, it's an argument in the Rishonim, but it's accepted opinion that the others kiyum kol Torah kul achli nitna. The Torah was kept by the others before it was given. So Avram put on tefillin. He didn't put, the Yaakov put on tefillin. They didn't put on tefillin. It says that Yaakov Avinu, when he played with the colored sticks in the time when he was in Lavan's house, so it said he accomplished spiritually what we accomplished by putting on tefillin. Avram Avinu, through his hospitality, was able to accomplish things spiritually. Yitzchak by digging wells. The issue was that the physical world, though, the physical sticks that Yaakov did and used, did not become holy. When Avram did something in the world, that part of the world did not become holy. Why couldn't it become holy? Because the definition of holiness is when something spiritual, godliness, comes into something physical and it unites with it, and then that physical thing becomes holy. Before Matan Torah, while the decree was still in effect, basically, that heaven is heaven and earth is earth, and you cannot make spirituality into physical, you cannot make physical holy. So what they accomplished was only in a spiritual realm. To use the quote of the Rambam uses in Parsha Mishnayos. The Rambam says the expression, the mitzvahs that the Oveis did, that the patriarchs did, were like reach, like smell. But anu shem and turak shemecha. But we have now, after Matan Torah, we have the oil itself. The oil itself is being poured, not the smell of the oil, but actually the oil itself. So therefore, before Matan Torah, spiritual was spiritual, physical was physical, and there was no connection between the two. So what happened, and this, by the way, spiritual and physical are opposites. Heaven and earth are opposites. To the extent, just for the record, no human with any amount of science will ever be able to create life. Because the definition of creating life is combining, unifying spiritual and physical, and they're two opposites, and a human being on their own can never accomplish that. We could take something and clone it. You could take a stem cell that already exists and you can clone it. You can take it one candle, you can make a lot of candles out of it. So you can clone things, you can create things, but only from something pre-existing. Before Matan Torah, the world did not become holy. The world was what it was. Came along Matan Torah. Hashem said, I'm going to be breaking the decree. And therefore, what did Hashem do? The pasuk says, "Vayered Hashem al Har Sinai." Hashem, heaven, spirituality, came down to earth. Moshe Amar, the pasuk says, what did Hashem tell Moshe Rabbeinu? Alei Elokim, go up the mountain. Then became the unity between heaven and earth, Hashem and world, spiritual and physical. That's what happened. And that's why Bilam is saying the whole concept of Torah is Hashem Islam Yitin, Hashem Yavarech Hasami Vashalim. It's the level of concept of peace. What is the peace that Matan Torah accomplished? Matan Torah allowed that physical and spiritual could now be joined. Now you could take something physical and make it holy. What is making something physical? You take tefillin, leather, tzitzis, whatever, and you do a mitzvah with it, you make the object holy. What does it mean making the object holy? You bring godliness into that physical object, the unity between spiritual and physical. This is the whole, by the way, you want to know what Matan Torah is? Matan Torah is, like Bilam said, Hashem Yevarech Hashem Vasholim. Hashem is making peace between heaven and earth. And this concept explains a lot of many issues. To start off, the pasuk says at the beginning of the Parak Yutes, okay? Parak Yutes, when it starts speaking about Matan Torah, B'chodesh Hashlishi, in the third month, when the Jews left Egypt. In the Torah, until later on, when the Jews came up from Bavel, there are no names of months. The Gemara says all of the names of the month. The Gemara says all the Imam mi Bavel. They brought up from Bavel the names of Tishrei, Chesh, and Kislev. Nowhere in Torah do you find the name of a month. Is b'chodesh harishon, b'chodesh hashvi, b'chodesh hasheni, b'chodesh hashlishi. It's numbers starting from Nisan. First month is Nisan, second month is Iyar, third month is Sivan, seventh month is Tishrei, and so on. There's only numbers. The Torah comes along and says, B'chodesh hashlishi, in the third month, going out of Egypt, the Jews came to Midbar Sinai. Who cares what month it is? It should say the Jews came to Midbar Sinai, and Hashem started getting them ready for Torah. Not only that, the Gemara says in Shabbos, Brech Rachamana, blessed is Hashem, the Yohev Orient Tlisoi, who gave a threefold Torah, Nevi'im, Eksuvim, La'ama Tlisoi, to a threefold nation, Kohanim, Leviim, and Yisraelim, B'yarcha Tlisoi, in the third month, which is Sivan, and then it says, B'yoma Tlisoi, on the third day of preparation. So the Gemara is emphasizing the number of three. Threefold Torah, threefold nation, third month, third day of separation. And if you look in the Gemara Shabbos on the side, there's a commentary called Rav Nissen Goin. He adds another 10 things of three. He says, Torah was given through Moshe. Moshe Memshin had 3 names. He was a descendant of Levi, 3 letters, Lamed Vav Yud. He was the third son from Yaakov Avinu. He mentions a whole bunch of things with 3. Who cares? What is this number 3 so relevant and important when it comes to Matan Torah? Why is it so important? So we're explaining what we just explained is because that's the whole aspect of Torah. The whole aspect of Torah is to make peace between heaven and earth. The whole thing of Torah is to make peace between heaven and earth. Now, what does that mean? Before we go into more details, but the whole inyan is to show that world itself is not a separate entity from Hashem. World and Hashem is all the same thing. And that started already from Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu, the pasuk says by Avraham Avinu, Vayikra Sham, he called there when he was traveling, B'Shem Hashem, in the name of Hashem, Kel Olam, God of the world. But grammatically, it should have said Kel Ha'olam, God of the world. But it doesn't say that. The pasuk says he called there Kel Olam, God world. So Chassidus explains, if you say God of the world, that means there's world and there's God, and God is the God of the world. But there's 2 separate entities, and he is the boss of the world. Kel Olam, Chassidus explains, means world and God and Hashem are the same thing. What did Avram, granted it was before Matan Torah, but that gave the strength for the Jews after Matan Torah. And what did Matan Torah accomplish? That word, like we said, the Bilam said, peace between heaven and earth. That's the number 3. The number 3 is Shnei Chsuvim Amachishim Zeh Ezeh. With one person, there's nobody to fight with. 2 people, 2 opinions. Like we say in Davening, 2 psukim contradicting each other. Achiyave Akosev Hashlishi, until the third pasuk comes, v'yachriya b'neihem, and makes peace between the two. What is the level of 3? 3 represents peace between 1 and 2 that are at fights, the differentiations, different opinions. That's what 3 does. 3 connects 1 and 2. This concept that world should realize that only Hashem exists, and Matan Torah accomplished that only in the physical world Torah exists. This concept, like we said, what Bilam put it into one word, Torah is Shalem, Lasi Shalem Ba'olam. This answers a lot of different questions. Number one, we mentioned this briefly before. We said before the Avos kept Torah. Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov kept Torah. Whether the Shvatim kept Torah is 2 opinions in the Medrash. Whether all the Shvatim kept Torah before it was given. But most opinions, even though Daskim Ba'altesi brings on an opinion that they didn't, but most opinions say Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov kept the Torah before it was given. Okay? If they kept the Torah, not only that, Rashi says in Chumash, Adam learned Torah, Noach learned Torah, that's why he knew the difference, kosher animals, non-kosher animals. Noach learned Torah. So what is the purpose of the Matan Torah if they already had Torah? Yaakov went to yeshiva 14 years to learn Torah. The Medrash says it never stopped Torah in the Mitzrayim even. So what did Matan Torah accomplish? Number one. Secondly, the difficulty is here. The first word of the Aseret Dibros, the first word of the 10 Commandments, is Anechi Hashem Elokecha. I am God, your God. To preface this, when Hashem gave the Aseret Dibros, with different opinions exactly how it worked, but basically Hashem said the first 2. Anechi Hashem Elokecha and Lo Yiyeh Lecha. We heard them directly from Hashem. Then the Jews, it was too great because the Medrash says, I'll call Dibar v'Dibar Parsha Nishmas. The revelation was so great. Every time Hashem spoke, their souls popped out of the body. Hashem had to resurrect them with the dew that he's going to resurrect the dead with when Mashiach comes. Okay? So the holiness was too great. So the Jews came to Hashem and said, David Ata v'Nishma, you speak, because we're going to die if Hashem keeps saying the Aseret Dibros. So whether Hashem said all 10 simultaneously and then whatever. But Hashem said 2 of the 10. Okay? Anechi and Lo Yiyeh Lecha. So it's explained, why did Hashem say those 2? Why not 1? Why not 3? It's 2. So it says, Anechi Hashem Elokecha, I am God, your God, is the source of all positive mitzvahs. What is the source of all positive mitzvahs? I am God, your God. Therefore, you have to do action to connect. Lo Yiyeh Lecha, the second one of the 10 Commandments, you should not have any other gods. That is the source of all negative commandments in the Torah. All negative commandments in the Torah originates from Lo Yiyeh Lecha, don't have any other gods. Don't eat pig. Don't think what you're not allowed to. Don't, because that's other gods. If you think what you're not allowed to, that means you're worshiping that God. Eating what you want to, talking, saying whatever. So Hashem said, the first 2, the source of all positive mitzvahs, the source of all negative mitzvahs, Hashem says, I have to say it clear. All the others are offshoots of that. From the 2, it's self-understood. The first of the 10 Commandments, I am God, your God, is the essence of the 2. And then you have the first word of the first one, which is the essence of everything. And that's the word Anechi. I am. In Hebrew, there is no word Anechi. Now there is, because Torah has the word Anechi. But Anechi, the Medrash says, is Lashon Mitzri. It's an Egyptian word. There is, in the Hebrew, the word for I is ani. Anechi, the Medrash says, Lashon Mitzvah is an Egyptian word. So the question is, the first word of the first commandment of all that is going to be on the Egyptian expression. There couldn't be anything else. It has to be an Egyptian word. Thirdly, I'm going to ask a bunch of questions and then we'll explain it. Another question is, the Gemara in Shabbos tells the following story. When Moshe Rabbeinu went up to get the Torah, okay, the Malachim said to Hashem, to no heitcha ala shamayim, give us the Torah. Give us the Torah. Hashem turns to Moshe Rabbeinu and he says, answer them. You have a legitimate right to Torah, right? Go answer them why you should get it and not them. So the Gemara says this. Moshe Rabbeinu went through the 10 commandments. He said to the angels, I am God who took you out of Egypt. Were you ever in Egypt? No. Never, don't mention God's name in vain. Well, you ever do business that you mention God's names in vain? Next is like Seesaw, not to swear God falsely. When do you ever swear? Honor your father and mother, since when do you have fathers and mothers? Shabbos, you don't work a whole week. He went through the 10 commandments one by one, and he told the angels, it's not you, it's us. So the angels agreed to him, and they said, okay, give the Torah to people. Now the question is, what right did the angels have? What right did the angels have to ask for the Torah? Hashem could give it to whoever he wants. Hashem could give it to whoever he wants. Why did the angels have a right to give it to me? So the Shachal Torah is a very great commentary. Says the following. They had a halachic right to get the Torah. Halachically, they had a right to it first. They had first right refusal. Why? There's a din in Gemara Bava Basra that's called Dina de Bar Metzra. Dina de Bar Metzra means if I have a house or a piece of property, a field, the Gemara talks about. You have a field, and I want to sell it. I want to sell my field. I want to sell my field. I must, or halachically, I must offer it to my neighbor first. Automatically in Torah, I have to offer it to my neighbor first. Why? The Gemara learns it out from the pasuk. Be a mensch. If this guy wants to expand his field, the most convenient thing for him to do would be to buy my field, then he can expand it. It won't have to be in two different places. So menschlichkeit, decency demands that I should give first right refusal to the guy next door to me. To the extent, by the way, that if I didn't offer it to him and I offered it and somebody else bought it, he can go and take it away from the buyer. That's how powerful that halacha is. So there's a din bar metzah, you have to give it to the neighboring first. So the malachim, the angel, came with a brilliant halachic right to it. They said, Torah is in heaven. Meanwhile, we are creatures of heaven. We have first right refusal to it. Halachically, you have to give us the Torah because we're neighbors. We want the Torah. Hashem turns to Moshe Rabbeinu and says, answer them. They're halachically correct. They have a right. So what did Moshe Rabbeinu answer them? Were you in Egypt? Were you parents? Do you swear? Do you do? Do you steal? Do you? That doesn't answer the question. They're asking a legitimate question. We're neighbors. We get it first. Moshe Rabbeinu comes along and says, hey, you in Egypt? Do you swear? Do you have parents? Do you keep Shabbos? Do you do? He's not answering their complaint. They have a halachic complaint. What's he telling them? Talking a Chinik about parents and Shabbos and swearing and all that. So based on what we said before, now we're going to explain everything. This explains all these details. Because Moshe Rabbeinu told them Malachim, you don't understand. Now Torah is being given to break the decree of spiritual and physical. The whole purpose of Torah is to make peace between heaven and earth. Yes, they kept Torah before, but that wasn't the purpose of Torah as making peace between heaven and earth. That was Torah in the spiritual realms. Avram spiritual, Yitzchak spiritual, Yaakov spiritual, whatever it was. They were keeping it in the spiritual realms. Moshe Rabbeinu says to the Malachim, you're missing the point. Now the point is Hashem is giving Torah. Matan Torah is to give the Torah to make peace between heaven and earth. If you're not on earth, Torah doesn't belong to you. You have no right to it, because Torah can only be given to somebody who has a right for it, and you don't have a right to it. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu answered them. You're telling me you have a right because you're a neighbor. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, no, you're wrong. You're not the neighbor of Torah. You were the neighbor of Torah until now. But Torah to be given is to make peace between heaven and earth, the number 3. Of 2, they make the unity between 1 and 2, which is the 3 Torah. You have no right to it. And that's what Matan Torah accomplished over what the Avos did. We asked the question if the Avos kept Torah, if Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov kept Torah. Well, what did Matan Torah accomplish? Matan Torah accomplished that Torah was given down here to make the physical world holy. That didn't exist before. And then the first question, why is Anechi an Egyptian word? Again, it's understood. Hashem says, Anechi Hashem Elokecha is the concept of turning Egyptian, which was the most immoral, corrupt nation at that time, to make it, Anechi Hashem Elokecha, the purpose of Torah is to transform world. Even a nation like Egypt, the language of the nation, of Anechi, to transform an Egyptian language to the word Anechi Hashem Elokecha, which is the first word of the 10 Commandments. That's what Matan Torah accomplishes. So now it makes sense why Anechi. Now it makes sense why Matan Torah accomplished how he answered the whole complaint about the angels. Well, the angels had no right to Torah. They have no right to demand it. It's apples and oranges. You can't demand something if you have no connection to it. Before the Malachim did. In fact, it's another interesting point. It says, Taisus says in the Gemara, but the Gemara says also, Taisus explains it in the Gemara Shabbos. The Gemara says that after Matan Torah, the Satan came to God and said, hey, where's the Torah? So Taisus says, where was he? Hashem sent him away before Matan Torah. Hashem sent, don't ask me what it means literally, but the Taisus says Hashem sent away the Satan, that he shouldn't come and complain that the Jews don't need to get the Torah. So Hashem gave him a mission somewhere in who knows where. And so now afterwards, the Satan comes back. He says, Hashem, where's the Torah? So he says, Hashem says to him, ask Ben Amram. He didn't say Moshe. He said, ask Ben Amram. So Moshe Rabbeinu, so Satan comes to Moshe Rabbeinu, and he says, where's the Torah? So Moshe Rabbeinu says, I don't know. How am I supposed to know? So Hashem says to Moshe, Badoyatu, you're a liar. What do you mean you don't know? You got the Torah. What do you mean you don't know? So Moshe Rabbeinu said, this precious gift that you were hiding for so many generations, I should merit that it should be called mine. So Hashem said, because of humility, it's Zichul Teres Meisha Avdi, the whole Torah is called Teres Meisha. But it's an interesting point. The whole concept of Matan Torah is the number 3. It's the concept of binding heaven and earth. It's the concept of transforming Egyptian to Kedusha. It's the answer that it doesn't belong in Leiba Shemayim. Torah is not in heaven anymore. Because Torah was given down here on the earth to make peace between heaven and earth. Okay, next. The opening verse of the Aseret Dibros says, Anechi Hashem Elokecha, I am God your God, Asher Hitzesicha Me'eretz Mitzrayim. Took you out of Egypt. Mibeis Avodah. Okay? So a lot of commentaries ask, why doesn't it say something greater? I am God your God that created heaven and earth. I mean, it should say, I am God your God that created heaven and earth, by the way, which makes more sense. That means the whole world is because of me, and therefore I'm telling you what you need to do. Why does the Pasuk, instead of saying who created heaven and earth, the Pasuk is saying, I am God your God that took you out of Egypt? Why? So a lot of commentaries answer simply, believe it or not, because that the Jews saw. That was tangible. They weren't there when Hashem created heaven and earth. They were there when Hashem took the Jews out of Egypt. So Hashem said, I am God that took you out of Egypt. In other words, you know me. I'm God that, I took you out of Egypt, you know me. Chassidus explains a much, much deeper level between going out of Egypt and creation of heaven and earth. And that's why Hashem by Matan Torah shows, I took you out of Egypt. And this demands a little bit of an introduction. How did Hashem create heaven and earth? So the Pasuk says, Vayomer Elokim, Vayomer Elokim, Vayomer Elokim, Hashem said, Hashem said, Hashem said. 10 utterances, Basara Maimaris Nivra Elam, the world was created with 10 utterances. How did he create it? With speech. Bidvar Hashem, Shemayim Nasu. With the word of Hashem, the heaven was created. One word we learned many times. In Tanya, we learned in Perek Chav. Now, the Rebbe explains that one word compared to the power of speech, we learned this, I'm going to go quickly. The one word compared to the power of speech is one word compared to infinite. A person has an infinite ability to speak. Infinite words. We can't actually speak infinite words because we live 120 years. 120 years is X amount of seconds, and it takes a second to say a word. So realistically speaking, we can only speak X amount of words. But the power of speech, the Koyach HaDibur, that's infinite. So one word compared to the power of infinite is zilch, nothing. Now compare that one word to the power of thought, which is much greater than thought, than speech. Compare that now to the power of the emotions. Compare that now to the power of intellect. Compare that now to the power of willpower, and then connect it to the essence. So one word is nothing, a million, billion, trillion times nothing compared to who Hashem is. So what was creation basically? It was the most minute, infinite times minute revelation of godliness. What happened by Yitzias Mitzrayim? What does it mean, I'm God, the God that took you out of Egypt? In the Haggadah we say, Ve'avarti be'eretz Mitzrayim, I went through the land of Egypt. Ani v'lei malach, Hashem says, I went, no angels. Ani v'lei saraf, ani hu v'ani v'lei yachet. Who went by midnight? Vayiba chatzi alayla v'Hashem hika kol b'chor v'avarti beretz Mitzrayim. The Haggadah says, which is Medrash, and that Medrash says, I and the essence of Hashem went over Mitzrayim that night. The going out of Egypt didn't come from a revelation of Hashem, the creation. It came as the as Chassidus use the expression, Asmus u'mohose yizbarich. That's what the Rebbe Rashab used. The essence of Hashem took the Jews out of Egypt. What is Hashem saying to the Jews by Matan Torah now? I am God, your God. What did Matan Torah accomplish? We just said, making peace between heaven and earth, right? Between spiritual and physical. Hashem says that is not coming from a revelation of godliness. That comes from the essence of Hashem. Why? Why? It's a very simple thing. We'll preface it with another question. This is Chassidus 101, by the way. Ask a person that you meet, is God spiritual or physical? Most people will tell you, of course, God's spiritual, not physical. Okay? That happens to be a totally incorrect answer. Because number one, if you say Hashem is spiritual, you're limiting him that he's spiritual and not physical. Secondly, if he is spiritual only, how in the world can he make physical? He can't. If you limit it as spiritual, then you can't make physical. So therefore, what is Hashem? Hashem is not spiritual and he's not physical. Hashem is above everything. He's above spiritual, he's above physical, and therefore not only can he create spiritual and create physical, but Hashem can even put them both together. Because he is, as the Rashba uses the famous expression, Nimna HaNimnois, he's held back from anything being held back, meaning there isn't a thing Hashem could do. There isn't a thing Hashem could do or can't do. Hashem created physical, he created spiritual, and he's so much above them, he can even put them both together. That's where you have the same thing. Is God miraculous or is God natural? So normally we'd say God is, holy, great, spiritual, miraculous. That's not true. Because if Hashem is miracle, how can he create nature? And not only that, he has to combine spiritual and physical, nature and supernatural. So therefore, what does it mean in practical language? To combine two opposites, you must be above both. Because if you're limited in one of the two, then how can you combine two opposites? The only way you can combine opposites is when you're above both of them. We can't understand what it means, but words, we can understand the words. If Hashem is spiritual, he can't make physical, and he definitely cannot combine spiritual and physical. Besides the fact that you're limiting him, that he's only spiritual. What is able, and this is the uniqueness of Matan Torah. We're learning the whole time Matan Torah was to accomplish peace between physical and spiritual, between heaven and earth. How can you combine two opposites? How could you combine heaven and earth? That has to come from the essence of Hashem, not the spiritual revelations of Hashem, because that's limited in being spiritual. What allows the unity between spiritual and physical? Only the essence of Hashem, which is above both. Therefore, the pasuk doesn't say, I am God, your God, which created heaven and earth. That was like they say in Yiddish, there's an expression, ashpayin yam. It's like you spit into the ocean, you're not adding any water. To say Hashem created heaven and earth, that's not what Matan Torah is all about. To create heaven and earth wasn't the essence of Hashem. It was the word of Hashem that created heaven and earth. That wouldn't do it by Matan Torah. What made Matan Torah happen was the fact that Hashem's essence took the Jews out of Egypt. And therefore, what's Matan Torah starting with? Anechi Hashem Elokecha. What does Anechi Hashem Elokecha mean? This is in first person, so to speak. But when we daven, we say the same thing. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu. Anechi Hashem Elokecha. Okay? When Hashem's speaking about himself, he says the word Anechi. Then Hashem Elokecha. It's not only I am God, your God. That's repetitious. What does it mean, Anechi Hashem Elokecha? These are three distinct levels of godliness. Anechi, the Medrash has an expression. Anechi Misha Anechi, the Le'Yisram is Le B'Shum Eis, V'Le B'Shum Kaitz. To use a modern day language, Anechi, it says, I is who I is. I am who I am. That's what the Medrash says. Anechi, Misha Anechi. I am who I am. I am not alluded to in any letter, in any crown of a letter. I am who I am. That, Anechi, when you say Ata you mean the essence of the person. Anechi, when Hashem started Matan Torah. Anechi Hashem Elokecha. I am who I am, my essence. Then the second word is Hashem, Yudke Vavke. What does Yudke Vavke represent? Mahava, creator, supernatural. What is, we learned many times, what are the letters Yudke Vavke? If you play around with the letters, you have Haya, Hoveh, and Yehiyah. Past, present, and future simultaneously in one word. What does that mean? Supernatural. Havaya represents not the natural revelation of Hashem, the infinite revelation of Hashem. And then you come to Elokecha. What does Elokecha mean? Elokim. You're Elokim. What is Elokim? Numerically, 86, which is the numerical value of Hateva, the nature. Elokim is pluralism. Elokim conceals the level, the infinite level of God. It's the finite level of Hashem. What happened to Matan Torah? Hashem says to the Jewish people, what's happening by Matan Torah is my essence, Anechi, who took you out of Egypt, also essence of Hashem. That is able to unite Yudke Vavke, the infinite, heaven, spirituality, and Elokecha, physicality, limitation, world, nature. That's what Matan Torah accomplished. So Matan Torah, in order for a Jew to take something physical and put spirituality into it, i.e. making it holy, that only came because of Matan Torah that Hashem gave, said, Anechi Hashem Elokecha, Asher Etzisecha Meretz Mitzrayim, I am God, your God that took you out of Egypt. That refers to the essence of Hashem, which is higher than spiritual, higher than physical, higher than everything. And that revelation of Matan Torah was so great that gave the Jews, for all future generations, by the way, the power to take something physical and make it holy. That's what Matan Torah accomplished. Therefore, what does it say? Asher Etzisecha Me'eretz Mitzrayim, which is the essence of Hashem, rather than Abba Shabbat or Shemayim V'Aretz. It wasn't only because this the Jews witnessed and this they did. It brings out the whole concept of what Matan Torah was about. And this explains another interesting question. Look at the 10 Commandments. All of the 10 Commandments the Jews had to keep before Torah was given. All of them. The 7 Noahide laws, one of them is belief in God, which the Jews had to keep anyway. That was started from the days of Adam and Noach. Okay? Shabbos, 10 Commandments Shabbos, we learned in last week's Parsha in Beshalach, Sham Samle Chaykel Mishpat V'Sham Nisor, Rashi says, over there, right after Kriyas Yamsuf, before Matan Torah, he gave him the laws of Shabbos, Paraduma. The Jews had the din of Shabbos before. Honoring your father and mother, that was normal. Not to steal, not to kill, not to commit adultery. That's all the 7 Noahide laws. So for these 10, you can imagine the top 10. It doesn't make sense that the whole commotion of Matan Torah, thunder and lightning, and the Goyim got scared, they ran to Bilam, and the whole commotion of Matan Torah was for what? 10 simple sayings that the Jews had to keep anyway before. But the answer is, yeah. The difference was, before Matan Torah, you kept honoring your father and mother because it was a logical thing to do. You didn't steal because it was logic. You didn't kill because it was logical. Matan Torah said, You're not honoring your parents because it's logical. You're not stealing or kidnapping or killing or because it's logical. You know why you're keeping it? Because Anechi Hashem Elokecha. I am God, your God. I am telling you to keep it. Now there's godliness in it. There's no intellect anymore. You were keeping the logical mitzvahs that were given before because Hashem said, I am telling it to you. Now my essence is telling you, and that connects the spiritual and the physical, that it becomes one. And this explains another thing. If you look at the 10 Commandments, the first 5 are between man and Hashem, Ben Adam Lamokim, and the last 5 are between man to man. It's called Ben Adam L'Chaveri. Now, why is it 5 and 5? Again, logical mitzvahs, what do you need to give it for? And this is a remarkable lesson, by the way, which is brought down in Sfarim, and everybody speaks about it, and it's mentioned in a lot of places. People think I could be a good human being without religion. I could be honest, I could be caring, I can be not cheat, not lie, not steal, I can honor my parents properly. I could do everything between man to man without anything between man to God. I'm a good person. I'm a very good person. Another person will come along and think, Torah, between man and God. Who cares about people? Between man and God, you have to keep Torah. The Torah made 5 and 5 to teach us a very interesting lesson. You cannot be complete between God and between man and God if you're not complete between man to man. And you cannot be complete between man to man if you're not complete between man and God. They must go 5 and 5 together, making up 10. Why? First of all, let's do the first one. If you're good between man and God, and you're not good between man to man, then you're not good between man and God either. Because Hashem says, everybody's my creation. Okay? If you love somebody, you love who they love. Hashem says, you don't love people, then you don't love me. Because I love everybody. They're my creations. So if you're not good between man to man, Hashem says, then you can't be good between man and God. Because you're not, they're my creations. I love them. Why are you not treating them nicely? But more importantly, perhaps, from the human perception, is if I'm not good between man and Hashem, man and God, I cannot be complete between man to man either. Why not? It's very simple. If it's you and me, or me and you, whatever, it's I come first. I come before you. If it's a choice of me or you, it's going to be me. And that's not a bad person. Logic dictates, Torah says, if you can only save you or your friend, you have a Torah obligation to save yourself. You come first. So therefore, anytime, I'll give you an example. Honor your father and mother. Okay? Torah says honor your father and mother. But if you're using human nature and human intellect, sometimes you can rationalize that I don't need to honor my parents. They abused me. They gave me up. They're not nice to me. They don't do what I want. Why do I have to honor them? I come first, though. Not to steal. Stealing is bad. Ask Robin Hood. Robin Hood will tell you, stealing from the sheriff of Nottingham, stealing from the rich to give to the poor. Robin Hood is as a hero in folklore. He's a legend. According to Torah, we learned many times, Robin Hood was a ganef, a thief. He was not allowed to do what he did. Why? Because Hashem said, don't steal. He didn't say because. When Hashem says, do a mitzvah and you are already good between man to God, which means I don't do whatever I want. I'm already subservient to a higher power called Hashem. If I'm already subservient to him, then that trait of subservience will resonate when I deal with between man to man also. And therefore, Sfarim explained, you want to be good between man to man, really good, then you have to be good between man and Hashem. Because if you're not subservient to Hashem, and you're not doing man to man because Hashem said so, then you're going to mess up because you come first. Your rationale will tell you it's not true. At the same time, you need to understand, if you're not good between man to man, then you're not good between man and God. Many times people ask rabbis, why do religious Jews steal? I've heard that question many, many times. Why do religious Jews steal? The answer to the question is very simple. If they steal, they're not religious. You're asking, let me paraphrase your question. Why do people who look religious say they're religious? Why do they steal? That's not a question. If you steal, you're not religious. If you're not nice between man to man, then you're not religious. The same Torah that says be nice between man and Hashem says you have to be nice between man to man. If you're not nice between man to man, if you steal, then you're not religious. You might say you are, you might look religious, you might dress with the whole works, but bottom line is religious people don't steal. Because there has to be this completeness between the Jew and Hashem and other people. Another interesting question. The opening statement before, Hashem introduction to the Ten Commandments says Hashem spoke all these words, Leimar. Now, in Chumash, when you have the pasuk, Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe Leimar, what does Leimar mean? Hashem spoke to Moshe, Leimar. What does Leimar mean? Repeat it to the Jews. Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe. That's the simple meaning of the pasuk. Hashem spoke to Moshe, Leimar. Repeat it to the Jews. Say it over to the Jews. Here the pasuk says, "Vayidaber Elokim by Matan Torah." It says Hashem spoke as Kol Advarim Ha'ela Leimer. Now it says in Medrash in Pirkei Rabbi Elazar, every single Jew, not only the ones that were physically there, every single Jew was present at Matan Torah. The Jews in Pirkei Rabbi Elazar says like this: not only the Jews of that generation, the Jews of every single generation of all kinds of neshamas of every single Jew was present. Even the neshamas of the future converts, kahalacha, any halachic convert, everybody was present when Hashem gave the Ten Commandments, when he gave the Torah. So now the question is, so what does Lamer mean? Hashem gave the Torah Lamer to repeat it to whom? Everybody was there, so nobody repeated to. And the Mefarshim and Chumash all asked this question. But let's speak it a little bit deeper. We said before, the whole concept of Torah is to bring godliness into the world, to unite heaven and earth. By the way, it's late, but the whole vessel for that was Vayichan Shem Yisrael, the Jews were united. When the Jews were united, there was unity by Jews. Then Hashem said, now we can unite heaven and earth. If the Jews are fighting, then Hashem said, I cannot unite heaven and earth. I need the Jews to do it. I need the Jews to do Torah mitzvahs to unite heaven and earth. If they're fighting, I can't do it. What was the prerequisite for Matan Torah? Vayichan Shem Yisrael, that the Jews came there united. So Hashem says like this, read it like this, Leimer le amar. What does it mean? Asada Maimorais Amar. Asada Maimor Vayomer Alikim, Vayomer Alikim. The 10 commandments correspond with the 10 utterances that the 10 amiras that Hashem created the world with. So what happened in by Matan Torah? Hashem is an introduction to Matan Torah says, Hashem is speaking all these words. For what purpose? Le Amar, to bring Torah, the sanctity of heaven, the sanctity of godliness, Le Amar, into the 10 utterances that Hashem created the world with. Uniting heaven and earth. That's what Torah is all about. That's why Bilam said, Hashem Yevarech Hasami Vasholim. The whole concept of Torah is peace between heaven and earth. Peace between body and soul. Body and soul of a human being are opposites. You have a godly soul, you have an animal soul within a body. It's contradictory. What does Torah do? It makes peace between body and soul. Soul, and that's the heavenly peace. Hashem gives power to the soul above to make sure the body keeps Torah mitzvahs for its benefit. Its benefit, to make peace between body and soul. The whole concept of peace, but it's too late now to go into this. The whole concept of peace within a human being is when his body and soul are at peace with each other. When body and soul fight each other, they have a miserable life. Within themselves, I'm saying. The whole purpose of Torah is to bring down the Asodas Hadibris into the Asodas Meimos. Again, once again, Fritz, very important. This Wednesday, there's no class, and next Monday, there's no class. I'm going to be out of town. But not this Wednesday, the following Wednesday, we resume Halach and Tanya. Until then, everybody have it. Again, once again, the class is sponsored by Yael Galub for her sisters, Yarted Rachel, Basrab David, and Shama should have an Aliyah.
Amen.
Amen.
So,
Amen.
Thank you.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you.
Thank
Wonderful
you so much,
class.
Rabbi.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Rabbi.
Have a great trip.